Okay, guys, hello and welcome back to Bright Founders Talk from Temi, an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. I'm your host, Matt Rickham, and today, guys, we've got with us Stenver Jerkku. I'm hoping I pronounced the surname correct there, Stenver, founder and CEO of Solid World. Did I pronounce it correct?
It's Jerkku. So it's it's Finnish.
Of course. Okay, so Stenver is a founder and CEO at Solid World, a serial entrepreneur from Tallinn, Estonia, recognized as the Silicon Valley of Europe. He has been in the venture-backed tech business for over a decade, with multiple growth startups, some of which have become unicorns. Really interested to find out more about this, Stenver. Let's start with your name. Because this is a very a unique name. I've never heard this before. Tell me, where's the name originate from? Is it Estonian? Is it Spanish, did you say?
So do you mean Stenver or do you mean Stenver from Denver? Because on my socials and in public, I call myself Stenver from Denver. That's easy to remember.
I can imagine. I guess it's one of those things which the English-speaking world is always really bad at pronouncing names, isn't it? So it's an Estonian name.
Actually, I think it's Swedish originally, but I am the oldest Estonian with the name Stenver, indeed. And the way the name came to be is that my mother wanted to name me Sten, but my father said a man's name needs to have an R in it. So then it came Stenver. And nobody can name or pronounce Stenver, so it's really challenging name. And then I a few years ago went to Denver to eat Denver, and in there I met somebody who was like, "Hey," I told him that, "Hey, I'm Stenver," and he was like from Denver. And ever since then, I actually became Stenver from Denver. And that clicks with people way better. It's a nice icebreaker. Plus, I got a selfie with Talik Putter in there, so it was kind of reborn, I guess, as well. So
nice. Okay, interesting fact to start off with. Good. Tell me, Stenver, let's go straight into the world of everything that you've been doing at Solid World. We'll start with this, and then I'm going to go back in time to know a little bit more about your journey, and then we'll end up with Solid World again. So tell me, what is it in a sentence or two, just so the listeners understand straight away that you're doing at Solid World?
Yeah, we're basically a commodity production financing solution. So one of the big issues in that we're facing is in climate markets is that the climate markets, carbon credits, for example, or plastics or X or whatever, they're all completely OTC, very untransparent, very illiquid markets. All the deals are done for carbon credits behind closed doors. When we talk about voluntary carbon market, you don't have price signals. It makes it very hard for project developers to get started because they can't even put together a reliable P&L. I know biggest landlord in Estonia who's been trying to start the project for 5 years. He says, "Gee, just doesn't know what the price is that it's going to get. How can they start a business like that?" And it also makes it difficult for them to find financing. On the flip side, on investors' side, I know many investors who want to do impact investments, but unless you specialize in that field, it's very easy to get burned because it's so untransparent and it's very hard to find reliable information to navigate the market. The deeper you get, the more questions often you get. JP Morgan told me they want to put $10 trillion into green finance. They'd like carbon to be part of that, but at this point, they just don't get it enough and it's too hard for them and untransparent. So we're solving that. We're fixing it. We're basically bringing true liquidity to the market and true transparency. You can think of it kind of like bringing stock exchange on Wall Street with deep markets. And how we function in essence is that we focus, by the way, on prepaid markets only. So carbon credits before they get certified. That's where the biggest need is. These projects need to get working capital early on in the project, not because it can take you 3 to 5 years before you can certify it. And that's where the biggest need is, but it's also where the most money is. So we buy up these prepaid credits ahead of time at a discount, and then we immediately list them and offer and sell them away for a spread to distributors like brokers, traders, market prices at completely liquid, transparent prices along with all the documentation structure, and everything is public. Even the underlying contracts we signed with suppliers are public. And people who like these initiatives can enter the pools, they can put capital there. They earn around 14% variable interest rate by staking there. And their capital is used to create these liquid markets. So they create liquid markets for the buyers and sellers. The biggest risk we have is delivery risk. So we have like AI-enabled risk framework where we assess the projects. That's what we do on a super high level. And happy to dive deeper or go back in time.
Absolutely. I mean, is so interesting what you're doing. First of all, I want to know where did this kind of passion come from? Because this is totally different kind of, well, not totally different. To a level, it's different to what you were doing before. So where did this passion come to start Solid World? Where did it come from?
So I've been in venture-backed tech businesses for a decade. I was early on in Glia, which is a New York-based unicorn now. And I've always wanted to have a lot of impact in my life. I sort of feel like there's two things I want to do. It's either there's two things like which I see are going to have like major impact on humanity. And it's either space stuff or climate change. So space stuff is probably not my generational problem, I feel like. So, or you need to be a billionaire for it to be. So I focus more on the climate change side. And in there, basically, the company, I did like a couple of companies before, but the company I did after Glia was called Diagonom. And it's a leading climate tech company in Central Eastern Europe. They just actually announced their another raise like a few weeks ago. And we managed 2.4 million acres of farmers across Central Eastern Europe. And we turned these farmers into regenerative farmers through carbon credits. So basically, that's where I got into the carbon space. I was there for like 6 years. On top of that, I also have a blockchain background. So I got into like Bitcoin in 2013. Then I was a victim of Mt. Gox. I lost all my Bitcoin. So classical story, you come to crypto, you get slapped. And but I've been in the space ever since. And when I was working on this e-agronom, we started seeing how bad the pre-financing is. I mean, you go to farmers and you tell them that, hey, why don't you change their farming practices and become environmentally friendly? And in 5 years, you can create something called carbon credits and sell them and make money. And nobody knows exactly how much you're going to make. But, trust us, if farmers, one of the most conservative people on planet, they are... they're looking at you and they're saying, have you lost your mind, dude? And so it was a really hard sell, and you need to figure out like how to finance these operations early, how to get working capital and sort of collateralize these carbon credits for them. And so this pre-financing got me super excited, and I felt like there is like a very natural blockchain like feel to it. So I started working on that, and initially, the Solid World was just a product line under e-agronom, actually. But at some point, I understood this is finance, blockchain, environment. It's everything I love, and I went to the board, and I basically exited from e-agronom with Solid World, and ever since then we've been independent.
Tell me a little bit about. So you were saying there, it was either space, which is probably not for your time unless you're a billionaire, or climate change. Where did this passion for climate change? Obviously, you knowing that you want to have an impact in the world, you were saying, but why climate change? Why is it so important for now?
This may sound cynical, but I believe that we just need to extend our runway long enough so we can get to space. So
interesting. Very nice. Oh, that's a quote. Okay, let's go back in time a little bit. Okay, so
once we get to space, we can bring so much materials and stuff, and we can move all the pollution and everything out there, and it's a game changer,
So that will be next. That will be the next task. Once you finish with this, in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it will be onto the space adventure. Nice. Okay. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. They're going to be either yes, no, or quick answers. It'll be really, really easy ones. So, for example, team or independently, what do you prefer working in?
Team.
Are you a risk taker?
Oh, yeah.
Is work-life balance important to you?
No,
Are you more focused on short-term goals or long-term goals?
it depends.
Mm-hmm. Do you consider yourself a hands-on leader?
Mostly yes, but not always.
Are you happy with this year's success so far?
Hell yeah. We launched a couple of months ago, like 18th of May. And got 1 million TVL, 200 industrial partnership inbound requests. I mean, I haven't had any sleep ever since we launched. It's been amazing. We're planning to launch more pools soon. So
I can imagine. So hell yeah, most definitely. Tell me a little bit about that, because you were talking there about work-life balance. You don't believe in it. You haven't had much sleep since you've launched. The company's been going now since, I believe, in 2021. Why is it this kind of mindset about work-life balance? What is it you don't believe in?
no, I mean, I believe that every person is different and every person needs to adjust it according to themselves, their current stage of life, their current needs and wants. And some people just are more career oriented than others, and this can change with time as well. It really depends on where you're at and what do you currently want from your life.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, for me, I definitely want to build a company. I want to make it bigger and better, and I've been in the state for a decade. And there's some other people who are more family oriented, and that's completely fine. And as a leader, you just gotta be mindful about that, and sort of you can't hit everybody with the same stick. So like, I personally couldn't work in an environment that's mandated for day working week or specific working hours. You know, frankly, sometimes I want to sleep in and sleep longer, and then I work longer in the evening. And like, I'm very fluid in that sense on how I do my stuff, and I have like huge intrinsic motivation, basically. And as an early stage startup, I think these are the types of people you want to surround yourself in, because you have very chaotic environment, lots of changes, and people need to be self-motivated, self-managed, and frankly, they need to work a lot to come over the barrier, and they should be rewarded with equity and everything for that. And once you cross the chasm and everything becomes more standard, processes are set, things get a bit boring, then you want other types of people. So
absolutely. Tell me, how big is your team now?
We're only 9 people. So right now we're very flexible and small. E-Agronom was 70 people when I left.
Wow. Okay. Tell me a little bit about that. So let's talk about your leadership type. First of all, I want to know, what is your worst skill?
Micromanagement. When you spoke before, like hands-on management, then I'm definitely very bad at like hands-on manage. I'm okay with showing how to do things. I'm not okay with telling how to do things.
Is that something you think, do you have to learn that, or is it just someone you pull someone else in to do that? Do you have to waste your time?
I don't think I need to. I don't think I need to. In fact, I think like if I simply refuse to work with people who need that sort of management.
Nice.
I think this might be necessary maybe in some big companies where you have multiple layers of management, but people at the top probably don't want people want to involve themselves directly with people you need to micromanage, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Tell me, okay, so your worst skill is that. What is your best skill?
My best skill? I'm very broad-based, so it's hard to say. I'm a software engineering background, so I know that stuff really well. I've had to, throughout this career, and especially in SolidWorld, where previously I used to be CTO or roles like that, I'm CEO, so I've had to definitely pivot more to sales, marketing, things like that. I'm also really good at, I think, giving people the freedom and guidance and inspiration and leadership if they are self-managed.
Nice.
And like sort of letting them, creating an environment where they can drive and bring out the best part of themselves.
Stenver, tell me a little bit more about that, because looking at your history, yes, you're a complete tech guy from the beginning. For other tech guys out there, tech guys, tech girls, who are thinking about taking this kind of plunge into the leadership roles, into the CEO startup world, what was the hardest thing for you to learn, and what advice could you give them?
Definitely read lots of books. I did a lot in the beginning. Hardest thing for me, I think, to learn was that you can't do everything yourself. You had to trust other people to do it. And so initially that was very hard as a developer, because as a developer, you're used to having like total control over everything you do. And you sort of had to pull yourself away from it. Now I've guess become the opposite, where I don't want the total control at all. I sort of prefer people who can just do things without me being very specific. And also the feeling that you're not doing much, right? So as a developer, you sort of just keep on shipping, and you ship code, you get your endomorphin for closed and push pull requests and commits and everything. As a leader, you often do not. You spend time talking with clients, with meetings, and you gotta like realign your internal understanding of what is actually shipping and what is work. Now, when you get to more like sales side, it becomes easier again, because you close a deal, that's a success. But when you're doing pure leadership and management, then often I met so many people, including myself, who say that they feel they've done nothing, and then they feel stressed out. They basically manage people during the day, and then they go during the night until they eventually learn that, hey, empowering people is the work. That is actually the work, and you actually, you should consciously reduce your own, if you have like a reasonable sized team, then probably you shouldn't do any coding at all yourself anymore. You should just focus on actually making sure your team delivers the results and is focused on the right thing.
How can you measure that though? How can you measure how many people you're helping out? Because obviously you can measure your success, as you're saying, when you're coding. But how do you measure that? Okay, I've done enough by speaking to the right people and giving the right amount of advice. Is there a way of measuring it, or is it just to understand that that is your job, starts and finishes when you finish work?
Frankly, I think it just comes down to your team's performance. Does your team have KPIs? Let's start with that. And do they hit the KPIs? Does it move the needle in the business? Does your team have churn? If the churn is high, then probably you're doing something wrong. And things like that. If the people are happy, they're staying, and you're hitting your goals, then probably you're doing fine.
Nice. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about Solid World here. So how does Solid World aim to make forward carbon markets more liquid?
We use a technology called automated market making. So those who know blockchain, then it's basically Uniswap for free pools. And then there's another protocol we use on top of that called Gamma. And then we have our own DeFi protocol built on top of that. And what we do is, like I said, we tokenize these prepaid credits with underlying contracts. These contracts are signed in strong regulatory frameworks. And we basically buy these prepaid credits from suppliers with the AMM. Whenever the price is attractive, suppliers just sell to the AMM, driving down the price. And at the same time, distributors try to sell these credits to their clients, and they buy from the AMM, and this drives up the price. So it's constant price finding dynamic, and people essentially trade vouchers. Like, Goldman Sachs gives out gold certificates, people trade them, but you can always take the certificate. go to Goldman Sachs and you want the underlying gold. We do the same with prepaid credits. But the liquidity comes from somebody called liquidity providers. You could become liquidity provider. You could go to our site, solid.world, connect your wallet, put in your capital, and start earning 14% interest rate. And your capital is basically like the oil that runs the machine underneath.
Tell me about the key features and the benefits of Solid World's infrastructure.
So the key feature is that we're creating transparent and liquid prepaid market. Our first pool we launched is Verra Mangrove Restoration Pool. It's the most premium voluntary carbon credit you can find from Verra. Mangroves are great. Not only do they capture carbon well, they're very biodiverse. They also protect the local communities from hurricanes. When hurricanes come and mangroves are cut down, those villages are wiped. Versus if you have mangroves in front of them, then the villages are fine. And so they're great. They're really premium on the market. They trade at good prices. And we created a liquidity pool of these prepaid credits. And the key features we have is that for suppliers, they can, whenever the price is attractive, they can sell their prepaid credits according to our AI-enabled risk framework. Like this says how much they can sell. For buyers, they can always buy from our pool and they can offer it to their clients at whatever prices they want as like a white label. They don't even need to tell them that they're using us in the background. They can also take the delivery off chain. So we can basically reassign the contracts. So blockchain was kind of never used in the background, even though it was, right? And this transparent and liquid market, what it does is you finally have like NASDAQ, right? When financial markets were invented, like Wall Street, capital started flowing faster. It became more safer to invest. People started financial markets have been a huge boon in lifting the world and its economies. So we're doing the same for carbon markets, but in the most transparent form possible using the blockchain technology, basically. And even the underlying contracts, you can go to our site, open any project, and just see the contracts that we signed with our suppliers. They're all public. And so by creating this liquid prepaid market, this gives investors confidence to start investing in these mangrove projects even earlier. Because we can get in at around planting or registration phase. So because once you start planting trees, you remove most of the uncertainty when the delivery happens. Before planting, though, there's also most projects take like a half a year to a year to actually set up the project. So there's also feasibility study stage. But by having liquid secondary market in planting stage already, this can give more investors confidence to come in at the primary market in feasibility study stage. So it's all about driving more capital into these initiatives, removing the risk, making investors feeling safer, making the market more transparent, and making it more liquid.
Nice. Okay, so you're saying that it's about making the market more transparent, getting the investors in and feeling more confident in it as well. But what sets Solid World apart from any other the competitors out there? Have you got many competitors?
We do, absolutely. But the biggest thing is that we have, so there's essentially two types of competitors you could try comparing us. One is with exchanges, but we differentiate with the fact that we're completely public and open. So all the exchanges can actually list us. And in fact, we're talking about that with them. Whereas usually the exchanges are very competitive and they don't list each other's stuff. But the second thing is that our liquidity is real. Whereas most exchanges out there, even though it looks like volumes are funneled through the exchanges, in the background, it's still OTC deals. And actual deals get done in WhatsApp, and then just volumes are run through the exchanges because they want to demonstrate volumes. And so you don't actually, when you look at the liquidity depth of the exchanges, you can see the order books being very thin. And I don't know how financial the audience is, but in the stock market, if you have a thin order book, that means if you start buying or selling, you have huge impact on the price because there's nobody else on the market. the market works by matching two counterparties. And if the order book is very thin, then you're going to have a huge impact, or there's no counterparties and you actually just can't even do the deal and you need to approach for an OTC deal anyway. So our liquidity is real and 24/7. Like you can, before you make the deal, calculate exactly what sort of price impact you'll have on the market. And it's deep liquidity because we use a technology called concentrated liquidity, which Uniswap V3 provides. So that's huge. These are like comparison with centralized exchanges. The other types of competitors are other potential blockchain players who do something similar, but in there, like nobody else is gotten as far as we have so far. Nobody else has actual liquid markets yet for prepaid credits. There are players who have done like prepaid lending pools or OTC deals or things like that, but nobody has actually created a liquid market yet. So we have the first mover advantage in creating like a true liquid market.
Okay, so you're saying that obviously no one else has created the liquid market yet, like you guys have. You're kind of working on no blueprint. You're in unwatered territories where no one has really been before. What has been in this process over the last almost 2 years now? What has been the biggest mistake that you guys have made, and how did you rectify it?
Yeah, the biggest mistake was that initially we wanted to set up like really, really deep pools. Like we wanted to come out with a huge bang and say like, hey, we have like $10 million live. And we spread that message pretty far as well. But what happened was few things. First of all, when we got closer to launch, we calculated that if we're launching the pool at such a deep level, we're going to spend a lot of money paying interest. And because, we're paying capital providers, liquidity providers like rewards, 14% APR. And so that will be like a huge drag for our balance sheet, while it will take us time to actually set up the whole underlying supply chain a bit as well. So that was not actually the minimum. Like it wouldn't have been an MVP. Now we launched with $1 million TVL, and that market is deep enough that we're already interesting to around like 70 to 80% of the institutions out there, which is like a great starting point, and we can scale from there as we become better. So we can just be more conservative with our cost base. The second thing with huge TVL would have been that we discovered that it's incredibly hard to get all the counterparties behind the same table, because we're basically going to the suppliers, talking to them, hey, we want to take your supply, commodify it, and hey, we're making your baby a commodity. So basically, it's took a lot of emotional discussions and stuff. So we understood that it makes no sense to work so hard, if that makes sense. And it's way better idea to start with a smaller pool, only one or two suppliers, and then scale the suppliers and pools from there. Because once the pool is live, the pitch is way easier. Then we don't have to explain them how liquidity and stuff works. We can just say, here's the price, you want to sell. It's like completely different pitch, 10 to 100 times easier. So in other words, the biggest mistake was trying to do everything too perfectly before launch, but we basically rectified it by just scaling down our ambitions a bit for the launch, and then figuring out the plan how we reach the same levels in reasonable timeframes and a lot more sustainably. And we, at the same time, needed to work way less.
Stenver, I hear a lot on this show that a lot of the founders say to me, if you are proud of your MVP, then you probably waited too long to actually launch. And most definitely, because you shouldn't be proud of it. It should be a working process which you reiterate on and you perfect as you go along. Okay, 2 more questions for you here. So with your decades of experience now that you've got in the industry and being a founder, tell me, what advice would you give to our listeners who are only just starting out on this journey as a founder?
Speak with a lot of other founders, not investors, founders. There's a startup genome research survey that comes out every year, and it's trying to measure what quantify startup success, and the number one metric is other startup founders. How many other founders does your startup know? And if you start thinking about it, it makes total sense. Other founders have experience, they have the network, they have the investors, they have your clients, they have everything. Become friends with other founders, become friends with your competitors. It will take you way farther than, I don't know, just picking with investors or your employees. So other founders are great. Plus, they also give you some sort of like being a founder can be lonely a bit, because like you're no matter how good friends you are with your employees, you're still their boss as well. But with other founders, it's different. They understand you. They have exactly the same situation. So having a few other good founder friends can be a massive boon.
Absolutely. It's definitely a community between you all. Tell me, in regards to, if you were to start out now, so when you started out, you've learned so much in this journey before, probably that you can't even imagine how much you've learned, and not all from books. What do you know now? What if you could choose one thing? What do you know now which you didn't know then at the beginning when you started out, which if you knew, everything would have been so much easier?
The scope. Keep your scope simple, small, focused. Try to solve one thing like super well instead of trying to solve everything okay. You can't focus on everything. Like, it's actually, my previous experiences, the biggest mistakes I made were from my past experiences were definitely scope creeps, just taking on new stuff more and more. And what you'll find and end up finding is and doing is that you're a jack of all of trades that does nothing really well. And you're sort of spread very thin, and you actually never have time to deeply think about the actual problem that you're solving and figure out how to solve it 10 times better. So that's definitely really important.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Stenver, founder and CEO of Solid World. Thank you for coming on. It's been great to pick your brain, Stenver.